Then we get to Smackdown on Fox. From Riyadh to Buffalo. That should have been the subtitle of this show. Twitter poll, over 4,600 votes. We had 4,000 in the Raw poll. We had a lot more here. Over 4,600 votes. 91% thumbs up, 9% thumbs down. You talk about flipping things, doing a total 180 from what the Raw poll did. What was the Raw poll? I think was, what was the Raw poll? 19 and, I think 19 up, right? 81 down? This was 91 up and 9 down. Hey, all you people who love to talk about how the polls are so negative, where are you now? I don't hear you now. Here's a positive poll for you. You're awfully silent. This was a Vince McMahon approved show that was largely the brainchild of Triple H. The NXT Invasion concept was Triple H. Of course it was Triple H. I mean, Triple H, NXT is his baby. No wonder NXT was put over so strong on the show. It was a Triple H idea. But Vince McMahon signed off on it. He approved it. I thought this was the best episode of SmackDown all year. I got emails from some people saying it was the worst. They hated the show. They couldn't stand it. Even when I was on with Keller the other night, there were a couple callers who called in. One person who was there at the building who said it was a C- or a D. I can't understand for the life of me how you could watch that show and think it was a D. All right, maybe you don't think it was an A, but to call it a fail or a miss or a D or an F, I don't understand that. I don't know what you're looking for in a wrestling show. You look for unpredictability, you had unpredictability. You want some new faces, you got some new faces. You want some good matches, you got some good matches. It was a break from the usual formula. Yes, they were handicapped in that they were missing a lot of their key talents. So I can understand if you're a Roman Reigns fan, if you're a Chad Gable fan, if you're a King Corbin fan. That was a funny. But I can understand that you might be upset you didn't get to see some of those people on the show. But I thought this was the best episode of SmackDown all year. They were forced out of their comfort zone. They were forced to give us matches that we had never seen before. They were forced to introduce us to a bunch of new faces all at once, which is not always the most ideal way of introducing new people, because some people get drowned out, they get lost in all the noise. But they were forced to introduce a whole bunch of new faces to us all at once, and they put each and every one of them over strong. No comedy, no fluke wins, just total dominance. In place of the advertised main event, which I was absolutely devastated that we did not get to see. Our originally scheduled main event of Roman Reigns one-on-one with Baron Corbin. I have found myself a good therapist. She is going to help get me through this. It may take some time. It may take some powerful meds. I just can't shake this feeling of sadness that has taken hold of me for not getting to see King Corbin against the big dog. And to hear Michael Cole call him the big dog. Maybe I should get a therapy dog. And I'll call him Joe. And I'll put a little vest on him. But I'll be okay. I'll be all right. I'll get through this. Don't worry about me. This week's show, not surprisingly, was back over 2 million. In fact, they were at 2.5 million viewers this week. So NXT finally gets a win over AEW. It only took a month. And a different network. With Michael Cole and Corey Graves stuck in Saudi Arabia, Tom Phillips got his job back for one night. He was joined by Renee Young and Aiden English. And later on, Pat McAfee took the place of Aiden English. And the Saudis, as far as I'm concerned, if the Saudis want to keep Michael Cole and Corey Graves for a little while longer, they can do so. Hat tip to Tom, Renee, and Pat. I thought they just brought it on Friday night. There was an energy there that is usually missing from WWE commentary. Pat can be annoying. I've seen him sometimes on these NXT pre-shows and stuff. He can be annoying from what I've seen of him, but I liked him on this show. I liked him being the de facto cheerleader for NXT. He got a text message, as far as how all this unfolded, he got a text message from Triple H at 1:42 p.m. that day, asking him, can you make it to Buffalo? And so McAfee reached out to Jim Irsay, the owner of the Indianapolis Colts. McAfee was a punter for the Colts for many years. So he reached out to Irsay to see if he might be able to hitch a ride on his personal plane. And lo and behold, Irsay let him fly to Buffalo. So he was able to make it to the show about 90 minutes before it started. Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman were on the show. They opened SmackDown. They were not supposed to be on SmackDown, which would be a rare time that Brock would work 2 shows back to back. That was not the plan, but he was on a plane back to the United States probably before the fucking show even ended in Saudi Arabia. And he had Hulk Hogan with him and Ric Flair with him because he offered his plane to them because they had mechanical issues of their own trying to get to Saudi Arabia. And actually, Brock was the one who came forward and said, hey, ride with me. So Lesnar rode with Hogan and Flair and Jimmy Hart, and probably Heyman, I would think, to Saudi Arabia. And it would be pretty shitty if Brock said, you're not riding with me, find your own way home, and just took off without them. So at least he took them back with him. So they were on SmackDown. They opened the show. Brock looked completely bored. He's probably tired too, but he looked totally bored. Very annoyed to be there. I guess that's his natural face on this show, his own version of a resting bitch face. They had time to kill since the show had to be rewritten, so Heyman talked very slow. They showed the Lesnar-Cain Velasquez match in its entirety, all 2 minutes and 14 seconds of it. They showed the post-match attack by Rey Mysterio. Heyman said, since Rey Mysterio, and this was comedy. Paul Heyman says that since Rey Mysterio is a Raw star, he is a member of the Monday Night Raw roster, and Brock Lesnar is on SmackDown, Brock is unable to kick Rey Mysterio's ass for what he did because they're on different shows. This is after Rey Mysterio was on SmackDown, I think, each of the last 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. They've been mixing people heading into the Saudi show now for weeks, but all of a sudden there's a hard split. Rey Mysterio is not allowed in the building, or else I guess he'll be arrested for trespassing. And so the only way for Brock Lesnar to get his revenge on Rey Mysterio would be to do what he did here, which was quit. Brock Lesnar quit SmackDown. The WWE champion, the champion of SmackDown, quit the brand so that on Monday night he can go hunting for Rey Mysterio. And so there it is. It appears they are swapping champions, with The Fiend representing SmackDown as the Universal Champion with the tomato title. And Brock Lesnar has now taken the WWE Championship, just like that, over to Monday Night Raw. Now, as they're leaving the building, we see Triple H and Shawn Michaels in the back, which was sign number 1. This was going to be an NXT night. Shawn even had his NXT hat or his NXT hoodie. Might have been both. He's like Mr. NXT now. We had a women's championship match. It was supposed to be a 6-person tag turned into a championship match. Bayley defending against Nikki Cross. See, the one benefit of the women not being allowed to go to Saudi Arabia, other than the 2 that they took with them, or 3, I guess, if you count Lana, is that they were all here. If they wanted to, they could have done 2 hours of nothing but women. They could have had Evolution 2 if they wanted to. I'm grateful they didn't, because I was kind of hoping that it would be an NXT heavy show, and it was. But they certainly could have if they wanted to. They could have taken main roster women, NXT women, and had an all-women show. And that would have been very interesting to see how they would have done in the ratings. Because I've heard some of the quarter hours for some of the women's segments are some of the highest ones on the show sometimes. So how would an all-women show have done on Fox? Is an answer, I guess, that we will not have. But I would have been very interested to see how that would have turned out. This match here, it was fine. It was all right. You know, Bayley hit the elbow off the top. Nikki kicked out. So Nikki Cross is on the top rope. Sasha Banks shoves her off. Bayley hits this new front face driver of hers for the win. And then the fun began. Out from the crowd came the NXT Women's Champion, Shayna Baszler. She shoved Sasha face first into the ring post. She got into the ring. She hit Bayley with a gut-wrench slam and a running knee strike. And Shayna Baszler walked back through the crowd and to the back, or out of the arena. I guess not, since she came back later on. This was, I love this. This was great. I'd say half the crowd seemed to know who she was. Half the crowd probably didn't. But she came off here like a total badass. And this was the first of many NXT cameos here on this show. There was a Sami Zayn segment in the back. Of course, Nakamura was not with him because Nakamura was probably one of the ones either on his way home on that charter flight or still stuck with all the other, I guess, not the top 20, as Curtis Axel would say. So Sami Zayn is cutting a promo and overwalks Matt Riddle. and Keith Lee, who now are the best of friends on the show. They were partners the other night. They show up together on Smackdown. It's like Aleister Black and Ricochet. Two guys who have, on television, nothing to do with each other, who now have been put together as seemingly a new team. I don't know if that's official or not, but this was played for comedy. Sammy sees he's outnumbered. He tries to back away. They follow him. They chase him into the arena. They beat him up. Riddle hit Bro Derek. Lee hit a moonsault off the second rope, I believe. Nice pop that he got. So, yeah, this was a good little showcase for Riddle and for Keith Lee. We had a Miz TV segment. It was supposed to be Miz TV with Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt was not present. And so instead, Miz was going to interview himself. And I was reaching for the remote control upon hearing that. Instead, though, he turned his attention to this invasion of NXT talent. That brought out Tommaso Ciampa. He called himself the greatest sports entertainer in the world. He came out very heelish here. Like, if you didn't know who Tommaso Ciampa was, you would think he was a heel. So they're going back and forth, jaw-jacking with each other. He says, Miz, you're exactly what's wrong with Raw and SmackDown. You come out here, all you do is play pro wrestler. You're not a tough guy. This led to a match between Miz and Ciampa. Ciampa won clean with the fairy tale ending. First in a clean sweep of wins on this show for NXT. Daniel Bryan runs into Triple H and Shawn Michaels in the back. Why are you here? That's what he wants to know. Why are you here? It leads to a tease of a match between Bryan and Triple H. And then Triple H says, well, you're not going to wrestle me. Shawn Michaels is in the background taking his jacket off. People are getting excited. And then Triple H looks at him and goes, put your jacket back on. Shawn says, it's cold in here. He puts the jacket back on. The ultimate troll, Shawn Michaels. Instead, he brings in Adam Cole. And they set up an NXT Championship match in the main event. First time ever, one-on-one, Adam Cole against Daniel Bryan. Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville were scheduled to wrestle Carmella and Dana Brooke. We cut to the back. We see Bianca Belair destroying both of them in their place. Out comes Tegan Nox and Rhea Ripley, who they compared on commentary to Charlotte Flair, which tells you what they must think of her. They compare her to Charlotte in that people have been saying that she could be the next big breakout star in the women's division, like Charlotte was, which she absolutely could be and should be. If I had one nitpick here, one thing that bothered me, I did not like seeing Rhea and Tegan out there together as partners, all chummy. They completely blew off whatever story that there may have been for a feud, or even just teasing friction. If, let's say, they end up as tag team partners in the War Games match in a few weeks. If they end up on the same team, they could have built up some potential tension there between them. Because if you remember, Rhea Ripley was in the ring with Tegan Nox. She was her opponent when Tegan hurt her knee, when she blew out her knee last year. And then after the injury, for weeks on social media, Rhea mocked her mercilessly. Just mocked the fact that she got hurt, and it just seemed to be setting up this ready-made feud for Tegan when she came back. Now they're walking out there as tag team partners. It's like they're best friends. I didn't like that, but I loved everything else they did here. They annihilated Mandy and Sonya. Outside the ring, Tegan went to go toss Sonya Deville over the announce table. I think what happened is that she could probably see the announcers were not moving, and Renee was still sitting at the desk, and she stopped. It looked like Tegan stopped and was not going to throw Sonya over the desk, but Sonya went anyway. She threw herself over the announce desk, and in so doing, she caught poor Renee Young right in the face with her foot. Nailed her with a solid boot right to the face. She took it like a champ. Moxley would be proud of that bump. That was only the second bump that Renee Young has ever taken in her career, she said in a video on WWE.com. The other bump, she took a chair shot once. I have no recollection of her ever taking a chair shot, so maybe somebody can find that or tell me what she's talking about. But this was her the second bump of her career, and if she has a say in it, it will be her last. I think she is over the whole commentary thing, which is kind of funny because this might have been her best night on commentary, or at least her least offensive one. And think about it. She went into the show, no preparation, no time to think, no time to overthink, no time to be nervous. These people had no prep time whatsoever. They just went out there, and they had a great night, I thought. on commentary. Now, I'm not saying the solution is just to never prepare and be like Jesse Ventura back in the day with Jim Ross. That I know that was always a constant source of tension between the two of them. JR would spend hours prepping for the show, and Jesse would just show up and just talk. But Jesse had a knack for that. Jesse was great. Jesse didn't have to prepare. He knew he had a smart guy sitting next to him, and he could just be Jesse Ventura. Not everybody is going to be like Jesse Ventura. He could probably come back today and be one of the best commentators in all of wrestling. And at this point, he's probably old as dirt. So I'm not saying the answer is just don't prepare, but I think there is something to be said for not being overly coached or scripted, on headset probably, but also just go into it and just feel it. Just feel what's going on and react. And sometimes that's really the best way to approach these things. We had Rhea putting Mandy in that inverted cloverleaf she started using, which is a great finish. Mandy tapped out, so another dominant showing here for NXT. That led to the main event. Triple H and Shawn Michaels, they come out to the ring. Stephanie McMahon comes out. Well, there had to be some kind of blemish on this show. We knew it couldn't be perfect. Out comes Stephanie McMahon for no reason other than to talk about the women wrestling in Saudi Arabia. What a landmark night this was. What a big deal this was. I mean, this was Rosa Parks in the back of the bus. Let us never forget that this is the same Stephanie McMahon who once compared her father's federal indictment to the terrorist attacks of 9/11, and how the struggles her family went through and how they tried to ruin my family's reputation, that was the same as the struggles that America was now facing in the face of Osama bin Laden. If that didn't win for most disgusting promotional tactic in The Observer that year, I would love to know what did. How many of us would have guessed going into this show on Friday that Adam Cole would be headlining Smackdown on Fox, defending the NXT Championship in a 20-minute main event against Daniel Bryan? It's the sort of main event that you would get if I had snuck into the building in Buffalo in disguise and locked Vince McMahon in a broom closet. You would get Adam Cole against Daniel Bryan for the NXT Championship. Or Matt Riddle against Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. Do you realize that we had Brock Lesnar and Matt Riddle? Didn't hit me until the show was over. We had Brock Lesnar and Matt Riddle on the same show. Now, they didn't cross paths, but they will. Give it time. I believe one day they will. And hopefully it'll be on a bigger show than Smackdown. Crowd was quiet to start. They really got into it in the last few minutes. Some people seem to know who Adam Cole was. They did the whole Adam Cole Bebe chant when he came out for his ring intro. As the match went on, if they did not know who he was before, they do now. They had, unsurprisingly, a great match. They had time to fill, so they gave them 20 minutes out there. They had very little time to prepare. But, these guys are pros. Daniel Bryan is still among the very best in all of wrestling. That he could go out there and have a match like this, to me, speaks volumes about the kind of wrestler that he is, still. Shawn Michaels, sitting ringside, he looked like a concerned father watching on. He's watching his first pupil, right, in Daniel Bryan against his current one in Adam Cole. Now you throw him in there, and what a fucking triple threat match that would be. There was one spot that I cringed watching, and I feared that Adam Cole might have broken his neck, and to be honest with you, I'm still concerned. I have a feeling that this is the sort of thing that's going to come back in a few months or a year to really bite this guy in the ass. So if you hear that Adam Cole sometime in the next 6 to 12 months needs neck surgery, you could trace it back to this spot here. Bryan gave Cole a release German suplex from the top rope. He dumps this guy backwards right on top of his head. Bryan, he stayed on the ropes. He was hanging upside down from his legs. But Cole went flying. He had a bad landing right on the side of his neck, his head bent to the side. It kind of reminded me of that Ricochet bump off the RKO, only this guy got dumped from the top rope. Bryan went for the, and that's on both guys. I mean, that's on Cole for taking that, and that's on Bryan for doing that. That was just stupid. I'm sorry. That was dumb. Bryan went for the diving headbutt. He missed. He got the label lock on. Cole made the ropes. Bryan went for the running knee. Cole caught him with a super kick, hit a Panama Sunrise, and the last shot to win the match and retain the NXT Championship. He pinned the former WWE Champion in the middle of the ring. 1, 2, 3. Daniel Bryan went into WrestleMania this year as the WWE Champion. And Adam Cole pinned this guy clean in the middle of the ring on Fox in his very first match on Smackdown. Bryan put this guy over clean. I thought for sure Roderick Strong was going to come out and interfere, and there would be a DQ, and you'd have SmackDown guys out there, big brawl at the end of the show with the NXT crew, and that didn't happen. So this was a pleasant surprise. They put the new face over, as they did with NXT all night long, because they had to. They had to establish NXT as being on the same level as Raw and SmackDown, which it is now. Now that they're on USA Network, it is. They cannot be seen as inferior. They cannot be seen as less than, at least not until Survivor Series, where I'm sure they're going to lose, because it is Raw versus SmackDown versus NXT at Survivor Series this year, as they broke last week during the Saudi show. We learned that for the first time. It's going to be Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. And I have every expectation that NXT is going to be on the losing end of things and get their clocks cleaned. And they'll have the built-in excuse of, well, TakeOver was the night before, and some of the NXT stars at Survivor Series, they're probably pulling double duty, and they have a War Games match the night before, so they're all beat up and they're all tired. That could be the built-in excuse, if and when they lose. But if you want people to take NXT seriously against Raw and SmackDown, the way to do that is to have them beat Raw and SmackDown, and that's what they did on this show. Triple H gathered up the whole NXT crew at the end of the show in the ring. Leo Rush was there. Isaiah Swerve Scott was there. Dakota Kai joined them. Raul Mendoza, along with Keith Lee and Tommaso Ciampa and Matt Riddle and everybody else. Shayna Baszler. I don't normally like these rah-rah things they do where you've got the heels and the baby faces commingling for the sake of the team. We got to do it for the team. At least Tommaso Ciampa. This dude knows his character. This guy gets it. He's out there in the ring. He didn't smile. He didn't clap. He stayed far away from Adam Cole. He stared at Adam Cole's title. He stared at Goldie from across the ring. Because for him to be near Adam Cole and not murder him would have come off very poorly. Kind of like seeing Rhea Ripley standing next to Shayna Baszler. I hated that. Triple H said, he borrowed here from his post-WrestleMania 14 promo. Talked about how you go to your blood, you go to your family. I half expected X-Pac to come walking out. They fired the first shot, he said, of Raw and SmackDown. We are NXT. This was as good of an advertisement for NXT as they could have had, short of them just repeatedly telling us throughout the night to tune in on Wednesdays at 8 p.m., which storyline-wise really wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense. So I'm kind of glad they didn't do that. But this was the best way to advertise that NXT brand. By putting their top stars front and center and portraying them as this dominant force not to be fucked with and winning. That's the key. In week 1, they won. They were booked like winners. Then again, so was the Nexus in week 1. And we all know how that ended. But I think that we will probably end up getting a few main roster faces popping up at Full Sail. At least that's what I thought they would do. Tit for tat. Kind of like you break into my house, I'm going to show up and take a dump on your back porch kind of thing. SmackDown being swept by the NXT stars reminded me, though, that they also got swept by Raw last year at Survivor Series. I think save for one kickoff match that SmackDown won. They didn't even count that in the totals. SmackDown got swept by Raw. In fact, I think Raw has won the battle of brand supremacy over SmackDown for the last 2 or 3 years in a row. And remember some people last year saying, oh, you're so impatient. It's going somewhere. They're telling a story with SmackDown. Let it play out. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. What a great story that turned out to be. Please do tell me what that story was. So here's SmackDown yet again taking the L in the Battle of the Brands. But once they get their full roster back, they're going to have to go and get some of that momentum back. And what better way to do that than to show up at Full Sail and destroy the place? Although after the travel week from hell that they all had, I feel bad even suggesting that, because that means they'd have to be back on the road probably a day or two early just to get them to Orlando on Wednesday. But then again, it's all a moot point because WWE's flying out to Europe for a European tour. So, forget that idea. They're not going to be able to do that this week. or even the following week. Maybe the week before Survivor Series, they can get some of those guys in at Full Sail. I think that would be fun. I mean, this brand split's a joke anyway, so hell, I mean, if you're going to have brands going at it, you may as well go all the way with it. Have them show up on each other's turf. Casey Michael is a guy who's pretty plugged in to the happenings around the WWE Performance Center. He runs the website Squared Circle Sirens, which reports on a lot of women's wrestling news. He posted a rare, ominous tweet that kind of got overlooked by some people, I think, in the noise of everything that happened this past week, saying that they are literally running out of lockers at the Performance Center because they have been stockpiling so much talent, not using them necessarily, but just signing them and stockpiling them so nobody else could have them, that they are literally running out of lockers to give to these people. And, more ominously, there are a lot of very unhappy people in NXT right now. And he's heard of a lot of people getting empty promises. There's talk about them not getting these TV raises they were promised. A lot of empty promises, and a lot of people apparently wanting to get released. And it makes me wonder, after this great Smackdown show that I just got done talking about and looking at what they did on Friday night, it makes me wonder if part of the reason they decided to add NXT for the first time to the Survivor Series this year, and the reason that this invasion was done, other than the fact that they had to, I guess because of the whole Saudi Arabia thing, but even just adding NXT into the mix this year, if this was all being done as a way to try to, or in part as a way to try to placate some of those people who were very disgruntled and who supposedly want to leave. Because if there's a lot of unhappiness, surely they must know about it. I mean, I'm sure they must be aware of the discontent that's there. So the cynic in me kind of questions the timing of all of this.